How's it going? I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and I'm coming to you from an undisclosed haunted location, as always. So I'm here today to talk about the new Shudder original documentary, Leap of Faith, William Friedkin on The Exorcist. I thought it'd be really cool to show this to my brother. He's a devout Christian. He and I have done many film projects together. You may have seen me over on his channel, Dork Daily. So I thought I'd have him on my channel for once. Well, I did it before, but for a second time. And I really wanted to kind of discuss this movie as well as the greater, shall we say, philosophical, spiritual implications of it. So let's talk to Chris.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, all the way from Dork Daily land.
Yes, every time that we do something dorky, we call you, and anytime that you're doing something creepy, you call me. So it works.
There you go. And this is not dorky though. This is a whole different.
Well, no, as I introduced earlier, the whole reason for calling you on this was quite different. I'm curious. I know that horror is not exactly your forte, and I showed you The Exorcist years ago, and you said it traumatized you or it just really freaked you out.
I remember when I watched it with you, and that might have been maybe 10 years ago or something like that.
It's been a while.
It was certainly when we were adults, but I think it was like maybe 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at Mom's house. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad I saw it, kind of. I in the sense that I appreciate it as a film, but there's certain things that like I don't really want in my head. And and even watching this documentary, which I thought would kind of be harmless, there were certain things in the movie that they cut to from the movie, and I'm like, I really was glad I forgot that, and yeah. So,
how long will it take you to forget about it now?
I hope not long.
So, firstly, before we get into I wanted to talk about kind of the larger philosophical, spiritual aspect of it. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts first. As a fellow director, what did you find interesting, appealing, not appealing about, listening to another director kind of talk about his craft over many, many decades ago?
Honestly, I thought that that was the most interesting aspect of the documentary to me, was just, here is clearly a very, very talented artist. And just kind of getting inside his head and just him being so candid about the process he explains of how he came up with all those small moments in the film was very familiar to me.
I'm sure it was.
It was, because I direct films, and you kind of have to be a little insane to do.
Yes, I would fully agree.
Because you have to see the entire movie in your head. The process is like you have to see the movie in your head first. You have to see and hear the movie in your head, and then somehow recreate that in person with other people, and try to get as close as possible, realizing that you're never gonna make a movie better than the one in your head. And having to adjust to that and kind of think on the spot. And so that was certainly, I think, the part I enjoyed the most about the documentary was just kind of hearing another director kind of put into words, I think maybe sort of aspects of directing that I think for me is kind of difficult to describe, to kind of put into words. It's hard to explain what this job is.
and really kind of fascinating for like a general audience not familiar with it who watch this to get a better understanding of that, to understand directing itself. I have to say, I really respected the fact that he trusted his instinct, even when the studio came in with studio motives and said, well, we think we should do it this way. And he trusted his gut. I do think maybe, as even he described, he went a little too far when he's like, yeah, you can never get away with that today. The whole bit about him, holding firing a rifle on set.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I appreciated it from an artistic level. Like here's this auteur kind of revealing how the gears in his head work, but certainly a lot of ethical issues with what he did and how he did it, I think.
And I thought it was very interesting when he was kind of discussing the challenges of directing Max von Sydow, the late great Max von Sydow, who we sadly lost earlier this year. The challenges in him saying, oh, well, I don't really believe in this, so that's why I'm struggling to read this line the way you want me to read it. I kind of liked how he was like, it's called acting.
Well, he kind of looked a little sad. And it's interesting because you can tell, like, he doesn't talk about his faith too much, but he clearly would fall under the Christian umbrella, Friedkin.
Yeah, he definitely, I would peg him maybe as a deist, that like he believes in something, he just isn't quite able to define it. He kept referring to it as, the movie god did this, the movie god did this, and is he not just referring to like the same one,
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting term he chose to use.
But I thought it was an interesting parallel, the idea of, his lead actor playing the Exorcist saying he didn't believe in it, and sort of, you have William Peter Blatty, who was clearly a very devout Catholic, had to be to write the novel, and then Friedkin, who's kind of more undefined. It reminded me of, the movie that you and I just made.
Jesus versus Satan, Rise of the Zombies. And on YouTube now. Check it out.
We'll put a link in the description.
It's about Jesus and Satan run against each other for mayor of a small Christian town while zombies take over. And look like a political ad for Jesus and a political ad for Satan. And you wrote the Satan one just fine.
It's, again, as a horror fan, as a writer of, I've written 2 novels, both of which deal with demons. In one of them, Satan is the primary antagonist. So, he's a character that I understand, or I guess to me, he's a character. And I always try to understand, what motivates him, and even, taking this back to the Exorcist documentary, I really like that scene between Father Karras and Father Marin on the steps where he says, why? What's the reason for this? And Marin says, it's the devil is trying to make us think that we are all ugly, and he's trying to make us think that we're worthless, and that God could never love us. And that's a very strong Christian belief in people who believe literally in the devil. But it's also something that I include, when I'm writing him as a character, that character trait, that bitterness he feels. I approach The Exorcist as sort of a horror fan, and there's ways that I interpret it. But I'm curious, how do you approach it?
In general, I try to stay away from like that kind of stuff freaks me out. Like as far as, you know, like demonic stuff and ghosts and this and that, because I feel like it's a real evil spiritual world, and my approach has always been like, you stay away from me, I stay away from you. Like I'm very against Ouija boards and this and that, because I just feel like you just don't want to mess with this stuff.
I will tell you, even as a non-believer, I have seen enough horror films and read enough cases of paranormal investigating to know that they always start, even in The Exorcist, it started when Reagan was playing with a Ouija board.
Yeah. And
I would stay away from those.
I've known people, and I've known people of people that have, you know, messed with that, and like some kind of scary stuff has happened. I mean, nobody's died or anything, but certainly
weird,
very unsettling things have happened. And like to me, like I think there's a portal to that world, and I don't want anything to do with it. So, you know, that's probably why, like, I mean, that's one of probably many reasons why I would probably only watch that movie once, and I don't really foresee any desire to watch it again. You know, but I could certainly appreciate the intention. Yeah, it has a good message. Obviously, like you're rooting for the good guys. You're rooting for, you know, God's people. But, you know, there's really unsettling images in there, and I think just stuff that you really don't need to get the same impact. I think you just kind of have more. There's more collateral damage. You know, it is what do you call it? The ends justifying the means is kind of how I look at it, and I don't think the ends always justify. I think the ends very rarely justify the means.
To that point, there have been cases where you had horror movies that dealt with, you know, the occult and you know, possession, that weird stuff they said happened on set. Now, part of that could just be the studio trying to, the production itself was cursed. Come see this movie. But some of it, you know, I think it was The Conjuring 2. Actually, they brought a priest on set to bless the set because they were afraid of just telling that story and sort of dealing with that subject matter. They were afraid a little bit, were they going to conjure something up? Yeah.
So it's interesting because you say that you say you're a non-believer, but is there part of you that believes that there seems like there's still a fear there that like you wouldn't mess with a Ouija board?
Yes. So there's, you know, when I say I'm a non-believer, I mean that my whole philosophy is, and it's why I call myself an agnostic and not an atheist. I feel like to be an atheist, you have to be thoroughly convinced that there's nothing. And my whole way of thinking is that there's no way to know the truth about the universe. There's no way that any human could possibly know it unless we discovered something. You know what I mean? That as of right now, I have no way of knowing. That doesn't mean that I reject it outright and say, oh, it can't be true. I see it like if you were walking home down a dark street and you saw like a dark alley, part of you would feel fear, like, I don't really want to walk down that dark alley. The rational part, I know there's probably nothing there. I know that, you know, I live in a small town with our, you know, where no one else lives, but there's still that fear that like, well, what if there is somebody there? What if there is
It's like Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yes, that's what. Of course, it's impossible for me to completely turn that off. So I don't. when it comes to the supernatural, the paranormal, and even, the spiritual, which I feel like there's a connection. If one is true, it lends itself to the other. Ed Warren of the, Ed and Lorraine Warren and the Conjuring series, he always argued, because he would talk to people who were consider themselves very religious, but didn't really believe in the supernatural. And he said, well, you have God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. That means 1/3 of your whole faith is based around this spiritual, supernatural world.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a fascination with it. I've always approached it, when I've read just about all the novels, or the books about, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've read The Exorcist. I've read The Shining. I love horror, obviously. I've always approached the sort of true paranormal stuff from the perspective of that of a scholar. Like, I'm interested in studying it. I don't know for sure. I haven't personally witnessed anything to convince me that it is true. But if I ever did, I would be the first person to adjust my opinion and say, well, I saw that. I can't deny what I saw. I have to update my belief. For the same reason that I don't believe in unicorns. But if I saw one, either I'm crazy or it's there, which maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. That's maybe a separate issue. But again, I think it's possible. So, I approach The Exorcist. I get what you're saying. And I certainly think, again, back to, some of Friedkin's less ethical decisions, that there was real harm in a literal, practical, logistical sense, not even factoring in, potential spiritual harm. But, that's how I've always sort of approached horror. So I can kind of separate myself from it a little bit. And I think if I did believe in it as you did, I would probably be much more frightened by it, because I'll tell you, you're not that. I know that just in general, you're not really a horror fan. That's why you run Dork Daily. That's why I run Halloween year round.
I like to laugh a lot. I'm gonna say.
I know you like comedies, but we both love sci-fi and superheroes and all that.
Sure.
But I know horror fans who are like crazy about like Jason and Freddy and slashers and monster movies, but they will draw the line at like demonic horror, not even supernatural horror. Like they'll watch a good ghost story, but anything dealing with demons and the devil, they won't engage in that, because for them it's too real.
He could have had a wider audience if he chose to leave out certain things. And it kind of goes like, what's that show? 13 Reasons Why, obviously has an important message. They're not promoting, what the characters do on that show, but they kind of are. So it's like, at what cost?
Yeah, I've seen that show, and I agree with some of the.
I won't watch that show at all, because I can't support that.
To wrap up, you said that you were kind of more interested in the director stuff, but speaking of the spiritual nature, what did you find the most interesting about the documentary?
From a spiritual standpoint?
Yeah.
I think it was interesting that you don't really see a lot of Christian good guys anymore as protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even then we didn't really see that a lot, but you see it a lot in horror, which is interesting, especially when you're dealing with something demonic. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
like strong positive representation.
Yeah, and in the sense that they talk about it, and I, it's been a while since I've seen the movie itself, but it did not feel like, those two characters felt fully fleshed out. They weren't stereotypes.
Oh, they definitely were. And that's something that a lot of, quote unquote Christians often in a drama or especially in a comedy, it's kind of played for laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And it took it seriously.
Yeah.
Now, from a horror perspective, what was your takeaway?
Well, I thought it was interesting. He doesn't strike me as he directed one of the most significant horror films of all time, but he's not really a horror guy. Like he said in the documentary,
he's not.
Like, he doesn't really see it as a horror film. And he wasn't talking about many horror conventions or anything like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I think that's what made the movie so successful, that it was not caged in by its genre. I mean, even though it's a horror film, but he really told a story.
He wasn't trying to scare people. He just told a story that people found scary.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll say this: there's not much I haven't said about this movie as a horror movie, but as a non-believer, I found it really kind of interesting and profound, especially that anecdote he tells at the end about the Zen garden in Kyoto, Japan.
Yeah.
I found it really fascinating and compelling, just the idea that one can find a sense of spirituality without specifically defining it to this is this is a Catholic belief, this is a Buddhist belief, this is a Jewish or a Muslim belief, So it gave me the sense that if I ever was feeling like that yearning, it's not impossible to get. I found that very interesting. But I am glad that we both got something out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I was very curious. I tapped you for this. I was just going to watch this and do a review of it. But I realized that I was really interested to hear what you had to say about it. And just because you think differently than me in that respect. And I think if we can say anything about the state of things right now, listening to someone you don't agree with on everything can be a good thing to just gain perspective. So before we sign off, where can everyone find you?
YouTube.com/DorkDaily. You can also go to dorkdaily.com and you can watch either of those places. You can watch our latest film, Jesus v. Satan, Rise of the Zombies, featuring maybe the craziest cast we've ever put together for anything.
Yes. You want a spoiler or you want to let them see?
No, well, we got to get them over there. So, if you want to see original American Idol host Brian Dunkelman, Saf Safri from Tiger King, Ming Chen from Comic Book Men, Brian Anthony Wilson from a million films in Philly, Silver Linings Playbook and Glass, Scott Schiaffo from Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. All those guys, you can see all of them in our movie, which is kind of this insane satire of politics, religion, and reality TV and television culture, and how all of these things have seem to have merged in our current era.
All right. Well, that is quite the advertisement. So as soon as you're done watching this, go watch that movie. It's pretty good. I should know. I helped write it.
There you go. Shameless.
Anyway, yes, we are shameless over here. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I will. I'll have to have you back for another one. These are fun.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it. I'm always game.
All right. So long.
See ya.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you learned something. I certainly did. I'll be back next week with some other horror-related topic. Until then, as always, you can find me on the website, www.halloweenyearround.com, where I post a lot of the reviews, articles, other fun horror stuff. You can also check out the Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at Halloween Year Round. So, until I see you again, remember, stay scared, and every day is Halloween.